Lando Norris's unnamed consequences have been removed after Oscar Piastri said he had a degree of responsibility for the sprint crash out, and Red Bull is still bringing upgrades to Mexico City. Welcome to Don't Crash Course, everything you need to know ahead of the F1 Grand Prix in Mexico City. This track was built in 1959, but the first Formula One Grand Prix took place there in 1963. One lap around this circuit is 4.304 kilometers, and we run this race for 71 laps. That makes the full length of the Grand Prix 305.584 kilometers. The fastest lap here is held by Valtteri Bottas, which he set in 2021. The track has 17 turns and 3 DRS zones, and those DRS detection points are between turns 9 and 10, and between turns 14 and 15. Now, this track has one major challenge, and that is the elevation. Sitting at 2,240 meters above sea level, this is by far the highest elevation we race at all year long. And because of that elevation change, there is a major effect on the performance of these cars. At a track with this elevation, cars lose about 20% of their aerodynamic performance and about 10% of their engine performance. Teams will have to bring a very high downforce setup that would normally be reserved for things like a tighter, twistier track. Think of a track like Monaco. This is going to be a very similar downforce setup as well here in Mexico City. And because of the elevation and the change in setup, DRS is actually much more ineffective here than it would be at another track. Meaning that even though we have 3 DRS zones at this track, it may not end up being a situation where you're seeing a ton of passing in those areas. But even with these changes in setup, this track does reach very high speeds. And with the lower grip in the corners at those high speeds, we very often see a race interrupted by a virtual safety car or a safety car. From 2017 to 2024, this track has had a 43% chance of a safety car and a 71% chance of a virtual safety car, which means that all of that will likely come into play when we're looking at tire strategy. And speaking of tire strategy, this is the second weekend in a row that we've seen Pirelli opt for non-consecutive tire compounds. Last year at this track, Carlos Sainz took both pole position and the race win, and the podium was rounded out by Lando Norris in second and Charles Leclerc in third. And some news to keep in mind heading into this race weekend: Red Bull is still bringing upgrades to their car at a point in the season where most teams have stopped doing so. The reason for this is that most teams have started to focus on their 2026 development, but it seems that Red Bull is intending to continue pulling out all of the stops for Max to have a chance to win this championship. To put this into perspective, Williams, for example, stopped developing their car for 2025 back in Miami. McLaren has also confirmed that with the Constructors' Championship locked down, they will no longer bring any upgrade packages. So with Max coming away from Austin with so many points and bringing that point gap down to 40 points to Oscar Piastri, Red Bull continuing to bring upgrade packages and Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri fighting with each other for their championship may be the perfect combination that Max needs to take that 5th world title in a row. This has been your Don't Crash Course ahead of Mexico City. Be sure to drop your podium predictions in the comments, ask any questions that you have about this track, and be sure to follow along for race coverage all weekend long.